By the summer of 1941, the German armed forces projected absolute dominance. They had routed Poland and France with stunning speed, executing complex, mechanized maneuvers that left defending armies shattered in weeks. Now they were turning east to launch Operation Barbarossa, an invasion of the Soviet Union that would mobilize over 3 million men in the largest military campaign in human history. Observers around the world watched with grim certainty. The consensus among British military experts was that the German forces would dismantle the Red Army with ease. Yet beneath the armor and the outward confidence, the architecture of this invasion was already fractured. The core plan driving these forces eastward was broken before a single shot was fired. For centuries, the famous Prussian military machine paired meticulous staff planning with the objective judgment of trained professionals. But by 1941, those officers answered to Adolf Hitler, an amateur strategist who believed his own intuition was superior to objective history. This map of Western Russia shows the strategic rift. His generals favored a unified strike straight at Moscow to cripple the Soviet state. Hitler rejected this, fracturing his forces into a disjointed chase after seaports, cities, and iron ore. When his own ambassador in Moscow, Count Schulenburg, submitted an intelligence report warning of true Soviet military strength, Hitler simply filed it away in a drawer. This willful blindness extended to his own logistics. While propaganda highlighted cutting-edge panzer divisions, the vast majority of the German supply chain relied on 625,000 horses pulling simple country carts. By ignoring the intelligence of his own experts and prioritizing intuition over logistics, Hitler committed his forces to a chase across a continent that his supply lines were never designed to cover. Once the forces crossed into Soviet territory, the friction of reality set in. The immense distances and rugged terrain immediately began degrading the speed of the mechanized advance. Then, the Germans encountered the Soviet T-34 tank. Their intelligence completely missed this weapon, which proved vastly superior to the latest German armor. Professional commanders on the ground, like General Heinz Guderian, recognized their supply lines were dangerously overextended and the campaign was losing momentum. They urgently requested permission to concentrate all available forces for a single, decisive push to capture Moscow before the autumn rains and winter snow arrived. Hitler mocked his commanders, stating that only ossified brains would care about taking the capital. He ordered the Central Army Group to halt, strictly forbidding them from entering the city. This delay gave Joseph Stalin exactly what he needed. Much like the scorched earth retreat of 1812, the Soviet leadership bought the time required to pull their industries behind the safety of the Ural Mountains and rebuilt. By ignoring his experts' plea for a focused objective, Hitler allowed the enemy to regroup, transforming a lightning war into an unwinnable war of attrition. Then the brutal Russian winter arrived. Temperatures plummeted, freezing the mud into iron and paralyzing the transport network. Millions of German troops were now stranded in sub-zero wastes. Because the invasion was planned as a rapid summer campaign, the men were freezing in thin, inadequate clothing. Seeing their armies beginning to disintegrate in the cold, the generals formally recommended a strategic withdrawal to defensible positions where the troops could find shelter. The Supreme Commander refused. Hitler forbade conceding a single meter of ground, insisting that ideological fervor and pure willpower could overcome freezing temperatures. When the military professionals pushed back, he fired them. During the winter of 1941 to 1942, Hitler purged his most experienced, independent-minded commanders, silencing dissent and taking all critical decisions into his own hands. The German infantry were now fighting on 3 fronts: the Soviet counteroffensive, the lethal cold, and the insistence of their own commander that willpower could overwrite physical reality. This strategy of willpower reached its absolute limit in the ruins of Stalingrad. Inside the city, the German Sixth Army was cut off, starving and out of ammunition, facing annihilation by surrounding Soviet forces. Hitler explicitly forbade surrender. He promised supplies from the Luftwaffe that never arrived, and instead promoted the commanding officer, Friedrich von Paulus, to field marshal, operating on the assumption that no German of that rank would ever allow himself to be captured. In the end, von Paulus surrendered anyway. Willpower could not synthesize food, fuel, or winter coats against the military logic of inferior manpower. Stalingrad marked the permanent turning of the tide. The aura of the invincible German military machine died in the rubble. This chart shows the attrition of the German armored divisions. With 25% of their tanks permanently lost and 15% of their manpower gone, the sheer mathematics of the campaign were turning against Berlin. Look at the opposing industrial capacity. By retreating and rebuilding, the Soviets were now producing 1,200 tanks every single month. When presented with these precise figures, Hitler struck the officer reading the report. Germany's defeat on the Eastern Front was not a failure of the frontline soldiers, nor was it a fault of the professional military staff who tried to implement a realistic strategy. It was the result of a single amateur who believed his intuition mattered more than geography, logistics, and the warnings of his own experts. What happens to an empire when absolute power silences objective evidence and professional expertise?